gentlelady yields. The chair recognizes Representative Westerman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. I have a great respect for this process, having served as a ranking member on this subcommittee and working through a WRDA bill a few years ago. So this is exciting because it's usually something we can come together and agree on. Ms. Uffner, as you mentioned in your testimony, Congress is best able to deliver effective, timely, and locally driven WRDA reauthorizations when federal and non-federal partners collaborate and engage in conversations, hopefully like the one that we're having here today. As you may be aware, in 2024, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers recreation sites welcomed approximately 260 million visitors nationwide, including millions across Arkansas. I chair the Natural Resources Committee. I think those numbers dwarf the number of visitors to our national parks even. Corps-managed lakes and parks, such as those surrounding Lakes Ouachita, DeGray, and Greeson, are cornerstones of our tourism economy and our outdoor heritage. These sites are not only vital to local economies, they also provide safe, affordable access to public lands for fishing, boating, and camping. However, many of these areas are facing aging infrastructure and significant deferred maintenance. Additionally, fees collected on site are not always reinvested in the locations where they are generated. And as we look forward or toward the 2026 WRDA bill, what opportunities do you see to prioritize the maintenance and modernization of recreation facilities in naturally rich states like Arkansas and across the country?
Thank you, Congressman, for your support and your question. Aging infrastructure is a huge issue across the board, not only for recreation, but for ports, flood control, water districts. And it's just an ongoing issue that is a very complex situation because in some cases you have federal regulations that also may impact the aging infrastructure as well as how to obtain funding for it. So it's about identifying those two parts, permits sometimes and funding issues. And to Mr. Camilla's point that there's a priority of deciding what's going to be funded. You know, so it's about identifying the challenges that are out there and directly going after them.
You mentioned permits, and I can't let that pass without talking about the need for permitting reform. Could permitting reform help stretch our recreation infrastructure dollars further?
The question was, does permitting reform help stretch the...
Could permitting reform help stretch our recreation infrastructure dollars further on core facilities? Or maybe another way to answer that, does it take a long time to get a permit and add cost to the project?
Well, you must have heard my thought pattern behind this. If it does take a long time to get a permit and there are a multitude of requirements, when you're talking about non-federal sponsors, they have a limited amount of money to deal with because they're also funded by the communities that they serve. So the longer the permit process goes, the more requirements, the more that they may have to hire consultants to do this. So anything that helps them streamline to get to a project off the ground is helpful.
I'm just thinking back when I first came to Congress, Lake Ouachita is one of my favorite places to recreate. It's where I grew up, and there was a local organization that volunteered to do maintenance, to pick up trash, and all they wanted to do was make things better, and they were told they had to cease and desist. They couldn't do that because the regulations wouldn't allow them to help make the place better. We did get a little bit of relief on that, but it's still a problem. That's something I think we need to address here in Congress. I could spend the whole time talking about recreation and permitting, but also I have a lot of major waterways in my district, including the Arkansas, the Red River, and the Ouachita River. Many of the levee districts along these rivers face challenges in maintaining their levees in accordance with the Corps' system of guidelines. So we have these levees run through very rural areas, and we have limited resources to be able to keep the levees up in the condition that they need to be in, which creates a safety issue. And then we'll have a big flood and the levee washes out and everybody's standing around trying to figure out who's going to fix the levee. The local levee district probably is responsible for it, but the local levee district has no funding to fix it. So I'll just ask the whole panel, do you see any opportunity for collaboration between federal and non-federal partners to address the safety issues being faced by our rural levee districts in these communities? Mr. Camillo, would you like to go first?
Again, those folks are down there walking every day on those levees. They know what's needed, and you're right. When I talk to our levee districts, the challenge is a lot of the unfunded mandates. If they belong to the PL 8499 program, for instance, it's making it almost unaffordable. And I think our fear in our area is that more and more levee districts are going to be withdrawing from that program if the cost is all of a sudden is outweighing the benefit of being into those systems. So there just needs to be some relief on the unfunded mandates.
And with an engineering background, I've always believed it to be true that good maintenance pays for itself over time. If you can keep these levees up and they don't fail, then the cost is much less than after these levees fail and destroy property outside the levee. Plus, then you've got the cost of rebuilding the levee. Mr. Jones, did you have more to add?
Thank you, Congressman. Prior to you walking in, I commented that I grew up in a rural area on the banks of the Mississippi River and the Atchafalaya River, so I understand these rural levee systems very well. I believe there's opportunities, again, for programs dedicated specifically to these rural communities that do face these significant maintenance and capital project costs. Another opportunity is to consider, based on the risk, not to and I say this with all due respect to the engineering community of which I work, not to over-design projects that ultimately raise the cost of them beyond the point of achievement, for the sake of over-design for risks that may never actually occur. And so I think there's opportunities in that regard, too, to understand what the real risk is and design to that likelihood.
And Mr. Chairman, you've been overly generous. I didn't realize the time was going the wrong way there. I yield back.